I am Charlotte Jackson, and this is Game Changer, the podcast that empowers you to align with your true self, mind, body, and spirit, because that is where the magic happens. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a certified holistic coach, Reiki master, and EFT practitioner, and I'm a recovered crystal meth addict. And everything I share with you are things that have already helped me, things I've learnt, or things I am learning along my journey. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here. It is my only wish that this episode finds the person that it is meant to find and empowers them to change their life. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Game Changer. Today, I want to talk about something that really helped me on my own healing journey and helped me out of addiction and to a place where I'm at now, which is in a life that I could honestly never have imagined 3 or 4 years ago. I never ever thought that the day would come when I would actually be clean and safe and home and reunited with my parents and having a relationship with them that I could never have even imagined in my entire life. So the thing that I want to talk about today is trauma. And for me, trauma is a word I think that is thrown around a lot at the moment. It's something that is everywhere. You see it on Instagram, you see it on TikTok. People are talking about trauma this, trauma that. And I'm going to replace the word trauma with pain. Because I think that for me, trauma is something that you go through that causes you emotional pain, deep emotional pain. And I think when we think about pain in terms of trauma, and we use this word trauma, sometimes it actually invalidates some people's experiences. And I'll go into this in more detail. So when I was a drug addict, I obviously came across many other drug addicts. And the people that I met were honestly from so many different walks of life, all completely different social backgrounds, racial backgrounds. Everyone had a different story as to how they'd ended up to where they had gotten to. And I would sometimes sit with these people and I would feel so out of place. And I would honestly hear them share their stories and some of the things that they had gone through, or some of the things that they had experienced, or the families that they'd come through, or things that had happened in their childhood were so incredibly traumatic that I would sit there and I would genuinely just think, what the fuck am I doing here? As in, what right do I have to be a drug addict when nothing that bad has ever happened to me? So I would hear stories that people would tell about the things that they'd gone through, and I would just think, holy shit, the things that these people have been through are serious trauma. So I'm talking about sexual abuse, I'm talking about having parents in prison, I'm talking about being involved in murder-suicides, all these things that are serious, massive traumas, things that you hear and you think, fuck, no wonder that person ended up a drug addict, because how else would you cope with that pain? But what would happen is I would hear these stories of all these things that had happened to these people, and I would think, I don't have a right to be here. My life wasn't that bad. I was never sexually abused. I never had a parent who physically assaulted me or did any of these things to me. So why am I a drug addict? And, you know, what right do I have to even feel that the things that have happened to me in my life were so painful that I ended up here? And that is so fucking invalidating. So I really, in this episode, I want to talk about trauma and emotional pain and the things that happen to us, and to let you know that whatever it is that you have gone through, whether it be something as fucking intense as a murder-suicide or sexual or physical abuse or anything like that, or whether it was something that you don't consider that bad, in inverted commas, I just want you to know that your pain is valid. If your trauma traumatized you, then it was traumatizing. If your pain hurt you, then it was painful. And pain is relative. Just because another person has gone through something so much worse than what you've gone through, it doesn't mean that your experience wasn't painful. And I really want you to hear that message right now. I really want you to know that just because other people have gone through worse things than you've gone through, it doesn't mean that what you went through wasn't painful. I hope you hear that, and I hope you feel that in your heart right now when I'm speaking to you. Because if something has hurt you enough that it has caused you emotional pain, then that experience was traumatic. I don't care if it was someone calling you a name in a playground. I don't care if it was someone breaking up with you. I don't care if it was someone ghosting you. I don't care if it was an off-the-cuff remark that someone made to you when you were on a night out, when they were drunk. I really don't care what it is, but if it hurt you, then it hurt you, and your pain is 100% valid. And I want you to just take a moment and really just say to yourself right now, my pain is valid. My pain is valid, and I'm allowed to feel the way that I feel, and it's okay to feel the way that I feel. This isn't a fucking competition, right? It's not oh, well, what happened to me was worse. That's not a thing. And by you looking at the other things that people have gone through and thinking, fuck, that person had it so much worse than me. What right do I have to feel this pain? You are actually preventing yourself from healing. You're actually preventing yourself from moving on and being able to actually continue on with your life. Because that shame and that guilt is actually holding you back from moving into the next chapter of your life. I'm going to say that again. The shame and the guilt that you feel around what happened to you not being bad enough is actually the thing that is holding you back from getting better and moving on with your life. I really, really hope that hit your heart. So for me, the thing that I really went through, that was kind of the catalyst to everything, was that I went through a breakup with my fiance. That was the beginning. Now, there were a lot of other underlying factors before this. I definitely already had low self-esteem. I was emotionally unavailable. All of these things that stem from childhood. But I wouldn't say that I particularly had a specific trauma. So the contributing factors that, had created me into the adult that I was, age 29, living my life in a relationship that I wasn't too sure about, and then we ended up getting engaged, and I called the engagement off, and that was the beginning of the everything. That was the beginning of the drug addiction, essentially. I've told this story so many times, and I'm sure that you know it. If you are listening to this, you probably follow me on social media, and you've probably heard it all before. So I'm not going to go into massive detail right now. But that was the big kind of trauma that I went through. But because I had low self-esteem and because I was emotionally unavailable, all of these things, I did not know how to deal with this huge thing that had happened to me, which was breaking up with my fiance. And because of that, I then ended up dealing with it in a way that was very catastrophic, which was drugs. And the reason that I turned to the drugs is because I just had this emotional pain. And that is what trauma is. When you have something that is so deeply painful, you will find a way to deal with it. And if you are somebody who is emotionally available and who isn't afraid of feeling these quote unquote negative emotions, you'll allow these emotions to come and wash over you, and you'll allow yourself to feel them, and they will pass through you and you'll process them, and then you will continue on with your life after you have grieved whatever it might be that you were going through. If you do not have the tools to deal with a big life change, then you will find ways that are destructive to deal with the emotional pain. Because a lot of the time we do run away from our emotional pain because we're kind of taught not to feel it. I know, even just from watching television, from watching people interact with their children, you see it all the time. It's like, come on, don't cry, you're fine. You hear people say that to toddlers all the time. Something will happen and they'll start crying, and the parent immediately, especially if they're out in public, they just don't want the kid crying in public. So instead of just letting them cry it out, which FYI, crying is just a way to regulate your nervous system, they will say, come on, you're fine. It's okay. They'll distract them. Come on, look over here. Oh, yeah. Is it okay? You're okay. And we do this as adults as well. We distract ourselves from feeling our pain. We distract ourselves from these negative emotions. We're taught that anger is bad. We're taught that anything that is not happy and positive is bad. I remember growing up, I'm pretty sure that my mum used to quite regularly call me a moody cow because I used to just get pissed off about things. And my sister was the sulker, and she would go and sulk in a room and slam doors and be moody about things. This is actually normal. When you feel negative emotions, you should really just express them, obviously in a safe way. I'm not saying if you feel angry, you should go out and punch someone. But if you feel anger inside of you, let that emotion go through you. Throw something in a safe space. Go exercise, go for a run. Punch a pillow, scream into a pillow, do something to let that emotion move through you, because emotions are energy in motion and they actually do need to move through you in order to be released. So when we don't allow ourselves to feel these emotions, they get stuck. And when they get stuck, I believe that is also then what causes things on an energetic level, things like depression and anxiety and these emotions that are not our natural state and natural way of being, but everything is out of whack and out of balance because we don't allow ourselves to feel and process these emotions and these difficult experiences when they come up. Part of this relates to what I was saying before, which is if you shame yourself and guilt yourself for the things that you have gone through as not being a big enough of a deal, and if you're telling yourself, just get over it, just man up. That's one of my least favorite expressions in life. Just man up. Just get over it. Why should you get over it? If it hurt, it hurt. And that is okay. You are allowed to hurt. You are allowed to feel pain. And if that thing hurt you, then it hurt you. So I really want you to sit with this. And as I'm talking, if there's something that you're thinking of that's coming up, something that you have gone through, that you keep brushing off, that you keep telling yourself, it really wasn't that big of a deal. I don't even know why I'm so upset. I don't know why that hurt me so much. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Like, it really wasn't that big of a deal. If you, whilst I'm saying this, there is a memory coming up and you are thinking of that right now, I can guarantee you that that is something that you need to give yourself permission to let go of. And when I say give yourself permission to let go of it, what I really mean is give yourself permission to acknowledge that what happened hurt you and upset you. A perfect example of this is something like when you're dating, okay? And we all know that dating in this day and age with dating apps and things like that, it's a bit of a minefield out there. And ghosting, I cannot believe how common ghosting has become. I have a lot of friends who date and who talk about being ghosted, and being ghosted is fucking horrendous. It triggers so many abandonment wounds in people. And it is such a cowardly thing to do to somebody else, because it really just leaves the other person hanging. They don't know where they stand. And the only reason that they feel like that is because the other person was too afraid to just say, hey, I'm just not that into you. And yeah, okay, I'm just not that into you is a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation. But for 10 seconds of awkwardness, you save someone experiencing this inner turmoil of, what have I done? Why don't they like me? What's going on? Where do I stand? Anyway, that is a perfect example of something that people brush off as that isn't a big deal. And it actually is a really big deal. If it hurt you, then it hurt you. And I'm going to keep saying that throughout this episode. If something hurt you, then it hurt you, and you are allowed to feel shit about it. Allow yourself to feel shit. Allow yourself. Let yourself know. It's okay that you feel shit. It's okay that that thing that you keep saying wasn't a big deal, that hurt you, it's okay to admit that it hurt you. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you pathetic. It doesn't make you anything other than a person, than a human being who experiences emotions. That is it. And every single emotion is valid. And every single pain is valid as well. And like I said, just because somebody else has gone through something far worse does not mean that what you went through was not bad. Like I said, it's not a competition. There is not a scale of what is worse and how far along the scale of how bad it was am I. Because once I get to really, 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 really bad, then I'll allow myself to feel the pain and the hurt. But when I'm down the other end of the scale and I'm just getting ghosted, or a colleague made a comment about me being stupid and it upset me and it hurt my feelings, or someone crossed my boundaries, or someone made a sexual remark about me and it really pissed me off, or all these things, I won't acknowledge them because they're not a big enough of a deal for me to be upset about. No. Enough of saying that now. This episode, if you're listening to it, is your permission slip to feel the pain and to give yourself permission to feel hurt, because that thing did hurt you. And until you actually give yourself permission to feel hurt, and until you actually admit that that thing hurt you and stop trying to brush it off because it wasn't a big deal, quote unquote, you will actually never move on from it. And that's what's so funny about these things, right? Is that there will be something that hurts us or upsets us, whatever it might be, whether it is a little thing or a big thing. If we do not admit that something hurt us to ourselves, it doesn't have to be to anyone else. You don't need to speak to the person who hurt you. You don't need to get them to say sorry or admit that they hurt you. You don't need their validation, right? Forget about the other person. This is all about you and your relationship with yourself. But until you actually sit with yourself and admit that certain things have hurt you, and then also say to yourself, it's okay that that hurt you. And it was a big deal to you. And that's okay. Until you sit there and you say that, you actually will never be able to let that thing go. So I want you to just take a moment right now and just sit. And I want you to think about something, and it'll be the first thing that comes to your mind as I'm speaking. Something that has been sitting with you that you haven't been able to let go of. Just take a moment and ask yourself. If you're in a safe place and you're listening to this somewhere where you can do this, put your hand over your heart right now. And I just want you to say to yourself, show me what I've been holding on to. Show me what I need to give myself permission to let go of. What is it that has happened that I've been brushing off as not a big deal. Maybe I've been laughing about it, making jokes about it, telling my friends about it, and we've all been laughing together. Maybe it's something that you haven't told anybody about because you don't feel like you can talk to anyone about it because, quote unquote, it's really not that big of a deal. The thing that you are thinking of right now, that thing is sitting on your heart. And it really, really doesn't want to sit on your heart. Because when you hold on to these things, these painful emotional experiences, it blocks beautiful experiences from coming in. It actually closes off your heart to these other beautiful experiences, and it closes your heart off to love. It's like a tiny little brick in a wall that's going up. So just sit there and just think about this thing. Maybe you're not somewhere where you can put your hand over your heart right now. Maybe you're driving. Maybe you're on a walk. Maybe you're lying in bed. Maybe you're in the bath. I don't know where you are or what you're doing. But whatever you're doing, I know that if there was something that is sitting on your heart, a little brick that's going up to build a wall around your heart, it would have just popped into your mind as I was talking. So I want you to take that thing, whatever it is, whatever that experience was, that thing that's sitting on your heart right now, and I want you to say this after me. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And I want you to sit and think of this thing. And if it involves another person, I want you to think of that person. And I want you to say to that person right now, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And I want you to think of that person, and I want you to say to them, say it right now with your heart, what you did really fucking hurt me. And I know that you probably didn't mean to hurt me. But what you did, it really fucking hurt. But I'm ready to let go now. Even though I keep telling myself that it wasn't a big deal, it was a big deal to me. And now that I'm ready to admit that, I can finally let go of what happened. Now that I'm ready to admit that what you did hurt me, I can finally let go of what happened. Because my emotions are valid and my experiences are valid. And just because what happened wasn't a big deal on a grand scale, it still did hurt me. And I'm honoring the way that I feel. And I'm letting myself know that it's okay that that hurt me. It's okay. But I'm ready to let it go now. I'm ready to let go. And I forgive myself for trying to brush it off. I forgive myself for saying it wasn't a big deal. And I forgive myself for invalidating my painful experiences. I'm ready to release this thing that is sitting on my heart. This little brick that is starting to build a wall around my heart. I'm ready to let go of it now. I'm ready to say goodbye to it. Because I know that now that I've acknowledged it and admit that it hurt, that I can let it go. How good does that feel? How good does it feel to be able to let it go? And you can come back to this podcast anytime you get that feeling again. I want you to come back to this podcast and I want you to just listen to that last little section. Just listen and repeat those words to yourself, because all your experiences are valid. Your pain is valid. If you're hurting, you are hurting, and that is valid. So allow yourself and give permission to yourself to be hurt by the little things. Because as soon as you do, you can let them go, and they don't have to sit there and weigh on you. Because the longer that we ignore things and brush them off as not a big deal, the bigger and bigger and bigger those things start to grow. It's like ignoring a pain somewhere, a physical pain. And the more and more that you ignore it and pretend it's not there, the bigger and bigger it gets. So give yourself permission to acknowledge the little things, because trust me, they're not that little. If they hurt, and that's it. So I really hope that this episode has given you the insight that your pain is valid. And anything that you experience that hurts you, it's okay. It's not a competition. It doesn't have to be major. If it hurt you, it hurt you. Allow yourself to feel it. It doesn't have to make sense. You don't have to think your way out of it. You definitely don't have to try and work out, why am I feeling this? What is going on? Blah, 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 blah. Just stop. If you're feeling it, just let yourself feel the emotion. Don't try and work out why. Don't try and work out why it's such a big deal. Why do I feel this pain when the thing that happened wasn't that big? Don't worry about that. That's what therapy is for. If you want to delve into it, go to therapy and work it out. But in the moment, allow yourself to feel it. Give yourself permission to feel it. And once you do that, you'll be able to let it go. So I really hope that this episode has helped you. And I really hope that you've managed to get some clarity whilst you were listening. Perhaps there's something that came up that you really weren't expecting and you're like, holy shit, I didn't even know I was holding on to that. But it makes so much sense because I kept telling myself it wasn't a big deal, even though it actually was, and it actually really fucking hurt me. And now you're able to let it go. And that feels so good, doesn't it? Don't you already feel so much lighter now that you've just had this random memory that's popped up and you're like, oh shit, I didn't even realize I was holding on to that. But now that I know that I can let go of it, and boom, I feel so much better already. And that is why I'm here, my friends. That is exactly why I'm here. I love to share things that have helped me along the way. And I really, really hope that this has helped you too. And if it has, please do share this episode with somebody else. You never ever know who might need to hear what I had to say. So if someone just now popped into your head, that person probably needs to hear this episode, so go send it to them. And if you do enjoy Game Changer, the podcast, then please leave a review and rate it, because it does help it reach more people. If you want to connect with me personally, then reach out to me on Instagram. My Instagram is @IamCharlotteJackson, and that is the best way to get in touch with me. I always respond to my DMs, so if you do want to reach out to me, then just send me a message and I will get back to you. That is all from me for this week, and I will catch up with you on the next episode of Game Changer. They are released every Friday, and I can't wait to catch up with you. Thank you so much for listening.